Morning, everybody. Good Vach, Shavua Tov. Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's very, very nice to see our Chashuva Kehillah, so many people coming out. Specifically want to make mention of Rabbi Beer, the Manal of our yeshiva. Thank you for being here this morning. I also want to note the presence of Eli Teitz Goldstein and her husband Harris, the Rav's sister and brother-in-law. And of course, Birshus Rabbi Steinmetz, whose shul this is, and in front of my Rabbi, Rabbi Willig, and our Rabbi and Chaver, Rabbi Jachter. Thank you all for being here. This morning, our purpose is to be able to Lagdu Torah Ladira, to learn Torah together on the occasion of the first yahrtzeit of our Mordechai, Rav Elazar Mayer ben Rav Mordechai Pinchas. The yahrtzeit was earlier this month, and today was a fitting day to be able to come together and to learn and to share b'schus the Rav's neshama. The Rav, as we all know, was a paragon of Torah and Masorah. Seldom a moment went by that he and I were ever involved in any kind of a conversation, and I know that so many here can echo the same thing, where he was not quoting either his illustrious father or one of his great rebbeim. In fact, almost every shaila that I brought to him in the context of the work being done in the community, in the kehillah, or in the yeshiva, always ended up being referenced back to something his father or one of his rebbeim had said or taught. And he had a tremendous ability to carry that forward while at the same time shying away ever from moving off of the derech of his Masorah. Everybody or anybody who has had the schus to live in this community and certainly daven in the shul over the decades knows the line that comes at the beginning of every one of the yotzros. Misod chachamim unevonim miledes midas mevinim. The Masorah of our chachamim, the Masorah of the discerning ones, is the basis upon which we are able to stand and we are able to go forward. And it's a tremendous chus for us to have in our midst today and to be able to hear from Rabbi Jachter and Rabbi Willig, two individuals who personify this and two individuals who have dedicated their lives to giving over the Masorah. Rabbi Steinmetz will, Amir Tzashem, introduce our Rabbi Willig shortly. Rabbi Jachter is no stranger to this community. Everyone here knows who he is. But what you might not know is that Rabbi Jachter is a carrier of that Masorah specifically in this community as well. There are very few people alive who can say that Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz was their Rebbe for practical halacha in a manner in which Rabbi Jachter is able to say, and then be able to carry that forward, halacha l'maisa, for so many hundreds of others, whether it was in the area of Gittin or in Kashrus or in Eruvin. I have never heard anyone other than Rabbi Jachter speak in the way that he has about Rav Teitz and the impact that he had on his own derech hapsak and in his own rabbanos. And so it is with great pleasure and distinct honor that I ask Rabbi Jachter to come and say a little bit of Torah with us.
Thank you, Rav Shapiro. Birshus Mori Rabbi. It's so wonderful. I have my two sons are here, and I see a bunch of Talmidim and a lot of old friends. It's great. It's great to see. It's great. It's such a wonderful turnout, and try to do my best in giving proper kavod to Rav Teitz Zatzal on the first yahrtzeit. So I just wanted to explain the choice of topics before I went into it. I wanted to explain why Rav Teitz did not wear the tcheles. and it came. I wanted to share a casual conversation. That's right. I mean, this morning I woke up in a panic, and I said, "Oh, maybe he changed his mind." But Rav Shapiro confirmed that he did not wear the tcheles, and I just wanted to share a casual conversation that I had with him about the topic about 30 years ago. And but before I talk about why Rav Teitz didn't wear the tcheles, I just wanted to share with you two tshuvos a little bit. One is from Rav Elyashiv, and it's very appropriate, of course, to quote Rav Elyashiv in this context because Rav Elyashiv was Rav Teitz's bochen. He gave him the bechina for smicha from Rav Herzog. A few years ago, and Rav Elyashiv wrote in a tshuva in 1997 to Revival Cohen. He gives 4 reasons why he doesn't like the tcheles. So it begins, number 1, he's saying that, okay, well, let's review a little the recent history here. So the Radziner came up with what he identified, what he thought the species of fish that the tcheles is from, and then came along later. Then Rav Herzog said, "No, that's not the correct one, but I have another one, the anthena." And now they're coming along saying it's a third group. And the words of Rav Elyashiv, he says, "So what's going to be the next step?" So we have to number 1 approach with caution. Second is that he quotes from the Sifri that says that tcheles is only bisman beis hamikdash. And number 3 is that there are machloksos that to know how to make the tcheles, that we're not in a place to be machriya. Of course, there's a machlokos between Rashi and the Rambam about how do you make the tcheles? Do you put is only one ingredient, or do you also put in other samamanim, other dyes, or is it only tcheles? So how do you know how you're going to be able to resolve this question? Which is interesting. That's also, I think that's the way the Rabbanim were, one of the reasons why they were against making a carbon pesach. Bisman hazeh. It says there's machlokes between the Ram and the Ravid about whether you include the gid anasha when you roast the carbon pesach. So how are we going to how are we going to bisman hazeh? We're going to be machriya the shayla. And the fourth is that there's a lechatchila. You want to have kanaf mina kanaf, that you want to have the tzitz themselves should be the same color as the beged, and therefore if what you have is not the tcheles, you're missing out on that being having the minakanab, having the tzitzis matching the color of the beged. Okay, 4 reasons why Rav Elyashiv didn't like it. Now, just to give a second view from Rav Asher Weiss, L'havdil ben HaChaim v'Chaim, and Rav Asher Weiss. Interesting, is someone who very strong scientific, as well as knowing an unbelievable amount of Torah. He also has a sense for the science. So he wrote in Chelik Beis of the Minchas Asher. He has a tshuva about it, and then he has three hasagos, and then he responds to it. So he begins by pointing out, I'm not so sure about it, because what does anybody remember in the 1980s? What was the big breakthrough for the tcheles? What was the big breakthrough that they had? The snail, but they knew about it. Rav Herzog knew about the snail already 60 years before, 80 years before. What was it? What was that? What was the serendipitous find that they realized that changed? That was a game changer. Anybody know what it was? They found sunlight. He exposed it to sunlight. Okay, wow, just by accident they discovered that. Get the right color. So if that's the case, then how come? And just to explain also why I'm discussing this now, the Gemara Menachos, it's coming up in the Daf Yomi. That's one of the why did I choose to discuss this topic of all topics to talk with Rav Teitz for the tcheles, because it's in the parasha. We read it was tcheles v'argaman. We said last night, and also the Daf Yomi. Rav Teitz loved the Daf Yomi, and I dare say, I think I said this last year. The Shloshim, the Daf Yomi loved him too. And I think the Daf Yomi, sadly, was mourning along with him when he was nifter. Remember that after the Daf Yomi that day was about Hespedim, and I almost felt the Daf Yomi itself was mourning along. He loved the Daf Yomi, so I figure it's very, very appropriate. So coming up this week, so we're going to talk about the Gemara Menachos gives us the recipe exactly how to brachal b'chaktan, exactly how to make the tcheles. What's not there? The exposure to sunlight, and that was a whole breakthrough. It's not mentioned in the Gemara. Why is the Gemara not mention that? So those who support the tcheles say it didn't have to mention. It's obvious. That's Rav Elazar Weiss, it was so obvious. How come everybody has such a hard time discovering it? And it was so clear. Everything was done outside. It didn't rain in the time of the Gemara. So it's an interesting tshuva. So then in the So somebody responded to him. It's anonymous. So somebody wrote back to him saying, "Well, look at the archaeological evidence." So here's an interesting point. They mentioned to Rav Elazar Weiss. They said, "Look, you find from the time of the Gemara in the right places, right? In the chelik of Zvulun, right? The area of Akko, Haifa, right? The northern coast of Eretz Yisrael. Oh, so the northwest coast. So this is exactly what the Gemara Megillah says where you find the tcheles, and you find these large piles of these cracked shells of the Murex trunculus of the snail, and they have not found any other huge mounds of any other animal creature. So that seems to serve as great evidence. There must be some leftovers from the tcheles. This is the leftovers from the tcheles production. That you have these large mounds of cracked tcheles. Some of the dye. There seems to be rock solid archaeological evidence in favor of the identification of the tcheles. And so listen to what Rav Elyashiv writes here. He said, Rav Elazar Weiss responds. He says, I'll quote to you: "B'archeologia ein anu danim b'madam meduyak ele b'hasharot." Let me translate this. Archaeology is not a hard science, right? But rather, what is hasharos? You judge by plausibility. Right? He says here, "Kasher motzim mimsaim atikim menasim l'she'er al pi ha'higayon hadimayon v'hashara ma shimshu mimsaim elu." You try to come up what is the most plausible explanation for the finds, and then ha'ashara svira biyoter mityashevet biyoter alalev hi ha'maskana ha'madeit mitkabelet. What do the archaeologists will come and accept? That which seems to make most sense. But look at what Rav Elazar Weiss responds. He says, "Ach lo kach machshavas halacha, ein zedarka v'lo svasa." That's not the language of halacha. It's not the derech of halacha. Hashara eina raya klal v'ikar. Plausibility, that doesn't matter. Now, Rav Elazar Weiss takes in many areas of his tshuvas. Here, just in this chelik, he has a very interesting tshuva about what to do if somebody is just drinking water just for hydration. Do you make a bracha on that? And he points out to the biology about thirst. I mean, it's a beautiful tshuva, and not everybody agrees with it. But he's saying that you should make a bracha because the hydration, that's what, when you're thirsty, is because you need the hydration. So he understands the biology, but that's a hard science as opposed to just plausibility. That to him, that's the halacha takes no cognizance of that, and that was his approach. He didn't even that it was a savet cheles. Now, on the other side, let's just present the other side. So Mori Rabbi Jachter Shlita and Lahavdu ben Chaim v'Chaim also they say Razam Nechemia also Mori Rabbi wore it. Rabelsi they say wore it. So what do they like to point out? So they point out, it's a very interesting case in Mishnah Berurah and Siman Lamed Tes. It says, let's say you have the following situation. Let's say you leave, this is all good takeaway from this. Let's say you have a situation where you really have to check the tefillin. So for example, give you an example for us. If you left your tefillin in a burning hot car, not in one of those, not in a strong container, you left it over the summer. Rabbi, is it fair to say that someone needs a bedika? They should check their tefillin, the ink and link. Oh my goodness, don't do that. Whatever you do, don't leave your tefillin in an unprotected and a burning hot trunk. And okay, but let's say you're in the middle of Wyoming, and that's the only pair of tefillin you have. It needs bedika. So should you put on that? And there's no other option. So what do? You wear that tefillin. You wear that. You put on that tefillin. You put on that tefillin, says the Mishnah. Of course, not a bracha, but that's all you have. If you have a possibility, you don't know. You have a suffix. Maybe this is a good. This is the only way to be able to come in the mitzvah. Then do it. So too here. It's a suffix tcheles. Maybe it's tcheles, and why not wear it? You have the possibility. Maybe it's a mitzvah. Maybe it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. How can you miss up that opportunity? So that's a little bit of synopsis, a little bit of the arguments back and forth. So when Tcheles first came out in the early 90s, so I listened to it. I heard Rav Jachter wore it. So and I remember Rav Lichtenstein spoke about it, and he said, well, the only reason he said, I think they're making good arguments. He said the only reason why he said I can't wear it. The Rav didn't wear it. Rav Soloveitchik didn't wear it. How can I wear it? He asked Rav Shlomo Zalman. He said he asked Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he said Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said he was afraid they wouldn't let him into the mikvah. If they, so okay, so these are not the most persuasive arguments. So he said, if you want to wear it, you can wear it. So I said, okay, Rav Jachter thinks you should, and Rav Lichtenstein seems inclined to. Rav Shlomo Zalman seemed inclined. So I didn't know that Rebbe was against it at that point, but so I started wearing it. So my wife and I were a guest. And we at the Titus for Shmini Atzeres. We were there for the afternoon Suda, and we were talking about a lot of nice things. And one of the things I was talking about was the new Tcheles. I was showing it to the Rav and Lahavda ben Chaim and to the Rebbitzin. She should be well and strong. And I was saying, the reason, the rayas, the archaeological evidence, the gemaras, the matches, and Rabbi Teitz was listening very nicely. He was smiling, he's very interested. And so all of a sudden, Rabbi Teitz said, okay, so why don't you wear it? So it seems it was we can make a persuasive case for it. So Rav Teitz. Very quickly and very, very quick answer. He said very, very fast, without blinking an eye. What he said is as follows. He said to me, how do you tie it? How did you decide how to tie it? I said, I did it like the Rambam. How did you decide to do the Rambam? I said, that's what Rav Lichtenstein tells the guys to do it like the Rambam, like the Teimani, the way they read with the Rambam. So he said, why should you do it that way? Why specific? Why should you have to follow the Rambam? So he said to Rebbitzin like this. He said, my tzitzis that I wear, I know how to tie it. How do I know how to tie it? With the ksharim and then how many... I know, because my father, who saw his father, who saw his father, who saw his father, and saw his father. I know how to do this with the tcheles. I have no idea what to do with it. I have no idea how to tie it. And I don't know if Rav Teitz knew this, but on the Ptil Techelet website, they actually give you 10 ways to tie the tzitzis. They are, I kid you not, the Sefer HaChinuch, the Rambam the way the Temanim understand it. That's the Rambam the way Rav Jachter understands it differently. Okay, you have the Gra, Rav Amram Gon, the Radzin, which is /Chabad/Ari. All right, you have the Balei Iter, Tosfos, Ravid. Right, so that's on the Ben Ish Chai. Right, sorry, so that's 10. What am I supposed to do? So. See, it's a different kind of an. The reason why I brought Rav Elyashiv and Rav Asher Weiss, it's a different kind of an approach to Rav Teitz. Everything was just the Masorah. I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do with this. And it's such a great response. And just wanted to conclude with this. Because this is the way, as Rav Shapiro said, this was this Derek and Psak. So with the Beis Din also, everything was, he learned getting from Rav Spitz, who was on Rav Chaim Ozer Grudzinski's, who was a very, very big Chashuv Rav here in Newark, and who he sat on Rav Chaim Ozer Grudzinski's Beis Din in Vilna. So everything, almost every question I asked him, Rav Spitz this, Rav Spitz that, everything Rav Spitz. It was Masorah. Everything was the tradition, and I love this story with Rav Teitz. After Mechiras Chametz, one of the last years he did Mechiras Chametz, I said to Rav Teitz, "Is this the way Mechiras Chametz looked like in Lithuania?" I said, are you doing it exactly the way it was done in the old country?" So he said, "Yes, except for one thing. I forgot what that one thing was, but he said it. He said such a smile when I said he was so happy to say that. I mean, he was so happy I asked that question. He's so happy to report, yes, this is exactly. This is what I'm doing. This is, just with the previous generation. This is what I'm almost done. The Rambam. I want to leave time for my Rebbe, much more important speaker. But I just wanted to close this up with a Rambam. That and a comment that Rav Soloveitchik made about it, I think Rav Teitz would really. I hope he's listening. Is going to really enjoy. So the Rambam has a very, very interesting discussion in Perek Yud Hilchos Shemitah of Yovel about when's the Shemitah year. Well, the Shemitah year. Now we have a tradition from the Gaonim exactly what it is. And what does and the Rambam disagrees with it. He said it's wrong. But what does he do? He says no. He defers to the Gaonim. Why? Because against what he said. Because he says there's a huge. What the Rambam says. Hakabala v'amasa amudim gedolim ba'ora v'chein roili talos. You have to see what was done in the previous generation. So forget about what I have to say. Now, of course, this is a great moment here. The Ravid in Azasagos, he agrees with the Rambam. He says, no, he should follow the Rambam. So Rav Soloveitchik made a comment. I'm sure Teitz really will love this comment. He said, this is the only place in the Mishnah Torah where the Ravid and the Rambam disagree, that the Ravid says to follow the Rambam, and the Rambam says, don't follow the Rambam. So it's so very, very, very interesting. So just my takeaway is two takeaways. Number one is that just a hope for those of you learning the Daf Yomi that this is to add something to the learning of the Daf Yomi this coming week when we're getting up to the tzitzis parts. But and have that love for Daf Yomi. Rav Teitz love the Daf Yomi. So if we can take that also, but also we have to pay attention to Minhag Avos and really have a tremendous respect for Minhag Avos. As I say to my Talmidim, the only way that your grandchildren are going to care about what you do is if you care what your grandfather does. So.
Thank you, Rabbi Jachter. I'm not going to move the mic down because Rav Willig and I have a little bit of a different height difference, so I'm a little worried. But we both played ball, I think, so. I have the humbling experience of introducing Rav Willig Shlita. I think just to introduce Rav Willig, I think it's appropriate just for our community to appreciate the Gadol Batorah that we are privileged to have here today. Rav Willig serves as Rosh Yeshiva in NYU, in Yeshiva Sarbein Yitzhak Al-Chana, and he's also Rosh Kolel of the Kol Elyon. He's Rosh Kolel in Yad Kolel. He's the Av Beis Din of the Beis Din of America. He's the Rabbi of the Young Israel of Riverdale. And what that speaks to, just so people appreciate, is something unique historically. Very often we've had, in Jewish history, great Rosh Yeshiva. Very often we've had great poskim. It's very unique to have a person who's a Rosh Yeshiva of the top order, and at the same time a posek of the top order. And I don't mean a posek in terms of answering shaylas for their shul or community, but I mean for the broader Jewish community at large. The Rav Moshe Feinstein and Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, they were unique in that sense. It's not a common thing to have. And we're privileged to have such a gadol that's Rosh Yeshiva par excellence, and at the very same time a posek for all of us. The Rav Willig receives and answers shaylas in Chaim, yahrtzeit, Chosh Mishpat, Even HaEzer, in every single space of Torah consistently, and at the same time gives shiurim to Bnei Yeshiva in Chaim, yahrtzeit, Chosh Mishpat, and Even HaEzer consistently. And to understand that someone who has both of those is a tremendously humbling experience for our community to be able to have and to be able to see. You know, a little over a year ago, I was giving a yahrtzeit shir for Ezra Witkin in the Elmore Avenue Shul. And right after I finished, Rabbi Shapiro got up and said, Nafla Atayr Sorshenu, that Rabbi Teitz was nifter. A few minutes later, we went into Rabbi Shapiro's office. I was there with a few people who have a little more experience in the community, and they were discussing different things, and they turned to me with the shaila. And I wasn't 100% sure what to do, so I said, I think I have to call Rav Willig. And so Rav Willig, and not coincidentally, was the first one to give psak to our community at large, after Rabbi Teitz's Petira. And that's not unique to our community. Rabbi Willig gives psakim to individuals. He has given psakim to individuals here whom he has never met. But because he's known to be the posek of our generation, that's how it is. So he has a very unique bond to our community as well, being that. I'll just conclude with the following story again, just to give context, so our community can appreciate who we're about to hear from. A few years ago, I got a shaila. It was a mara. And I wasn't sure. It was about probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I wasn't sure. I didn't feel confident about it. So I brought it with me to yeshiva, and I showed one of the rabbanim there, a rabbi who's known as a tremendous Talmid Chacham and a posek as well. And he was looking, and he had the same issue as me. And we showed one other person also had the same issue. And unfortunately, there were other details that made this case unique, but no one was able to be matir in any way. So the rabbi who I originally went to turned to me and said, I think you should bring this to Rav Willig. So I kind of looked, and and I feel like it wasn't good. Well, why was I going to bring it to Rav Willig? So the rabbi turned to me, and he said, in this language, he said, Rav Willig is zoche to a Ruach HaKodesh, and none of us are zoche to. And I think we should appreciate what that comment meant. And I apologize, Rabbi should be mochel me if I didn't mean embarrassment in any way, but I think our community should understand what it means to have a gadol in our presence. So it's our zchus to have Gaon Rav Willig Shlita.
Thank you for that grossly exaggerated introduction. I received a phone call from Rav Binyamin Blau Shlita asking me to participate in this first yahrtzeit commemoration of his uncle. I said yes right away, because your Rav was a gadol b'Yisrael who served his community here and beyond for so many years. And my topic today is Hamesorah, and I will conclude my remarks by going back to the topic of Tchelis that Rav Jachter began with, but I have a much more lengthy way till we get there. I was told today, just now, by Rav Teitz's sister, Ellie, that my father apparently served as executive director of JEC in the 1940s, before I was born. You'll have to show me how you know that, because I never heard that. He served in a different yeshiva when I was a youngster. But it makes sense. It makes sense. My father always had the Hamesorah of helping yeshivas. And at that time, Rav Teitz Rav Pinchas Teitz founded the yeshiva, which was not a simple thing. In the 40s, to start a yeshiva in the 40s was an uphill battle. Perhaps we'll come back to it a little bit. So I'm happy to hear that we say Torah machzeres al achsanya shalom. I'm back in this community after maybe 80 years later to participate in this important gathering. I brought with me something which goes back to the beginning of the Masorah. It's a sefer called Yevul HaYovlos. I assume no one ever even saw this. This is put out with the centennial of our yeshiva, and it has Divrei Torah from many of the Rabbanim who served in our yeshiva in previous generations. One of them, and then he gives their biographies. Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz. For those who don't know, this is your Rav's grandfather after whom he was named. It tells you the years that he lived from 1878 to 1933. It tells you where he was born, came first to England, came to America, first in Trenton. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in our yeshiva for 10 years, 1912 to 1922. In 1919, came the Rabbi of Elizabeth, where he served until he passed away in 1933. This is Masorah, going back a long, long way. The namesake of your Rav. Seems to me that the pillar of your Rav's standing rested, as we heard from Rabbi Jachter Shlita, on the Masorah he received from his father. It's clear. His father, you have to begin there. That's what Rav Elazar Mayer would want us to begin, no question. His father was a giant in his time. Rabbi Yamin Blau told me a couple of stories, which I'll sprinkle in. He was well known for his expertise in shchita. In those days, that was a very, very big problem. And he knew how to get it right, and equally importantly, how to drive out those who got it wrong. It was a very scandalous situation of shchita when Rav Teitz Sr. Zatzal took over the reins. I believe he took over the reins from his father-in-law. I think he may have been engaged at the time that his father passed away. He was married already? Neither. He came in, married the daughter, and took over the Rabbanis. Oh, that's a good move. Okay. But not long after the Patir of Rabbi Preil. He was in the 30s, he was already the Rav here. Correct, in the 30s. That's almost a century ago. It's 1926. Some 90 years ago, he became the Rav in this town. And this town was not what it is now. He put this town on the map. Rabbi Yamin Blau told me that he had to put out certain shchitas, and they got involved with the mafia. He wasn't afraid. You know, that's how they controlled some of the kosher meat business in those days. It's crazy, it sounds to us now. But he wasn't afraid. He created a kehillah in the 1930s. What's a kehillah? Let me digress for a moment with what I heard from Rabbi Bezdin Zal, one of the great rabbis of our yeshiva, who came to visit another great, bold leader of that time, Rav Yosef Broya, who came penniless as a refugee from Germany. He says he's going to establish a kehillah in Washington Heights. So Rabbi Bezdin already had been a Rav there before. How did he define a kehillah? And he said it in his German, Ein kehillah muss han Schule haben, a school, und ein Schchita haben, a Schchita, und ein Tznius haben, a mikveh. And there was none of this existed in the Heights, and Rabbi Bezdin was incredulous, but Rabbi Broy did it, made all three. So did Rabbi Teitz here in Elizabeth. He made a school, he made a mikveh, and he made a Schchita. So these are these bold leaders who came from Europe. Broy had a tradition from his father and grandfather of Shamshon and Fall Hirsch. Rav Teitz came with his tradition, his own traditions, and that of his father-in-law. And he had, as we heard before, these traditions. The Rebbe, since he should be well, comes from incredible yichus. Incredible yichus, Hadaras. He's the greatest Rabbanim of Mir and Yerushalayim. And so therefore they built as a couple, a family, a wonderful family, all with tradition. I want to speak a moment about the name. Elazar, and his father was Pinchas. If you open the Rambam, in his introduction to the Yad HaChazaka, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu, we all know Moshe Kibul Torah Misina Mesor Yoshua. Everybody knows that Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Sounds like Yoshua was a Ben Yochad, an only Talmud. Not true. There were three individuals to whom Moshe gave the Torah. Aside from Yeshua, there was Elazar, and there was Pinchas. Open up page 1 of the Rambam. These two names that we're commemorating today exactly represent the idea of the Mesorah, going back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Of course, the second name, Meir. Meir is someone who is a beacon of light, someone who illuminates, as your Rav did, both here in the community, continuing his father's traditions and introducing new things when necessary. For example, give one example, the Eruv. For those who, no one is old enough to remember here, until 1974, there were no Eruv in this country to speak of. No Eruv. But the tradition from Europe, yeah, they tried to renew it in 1950 after the war, but didn't catch on in this country. Just didn't. In 1974, Moshe Feinstein, the Gadol Hador, wrote a brief note to Rav Peretz Steinberg Shlita about an Eruv in Kugon Hills, and this started a nationwide revolution of the acceptability of Eruv. Rav Pinchas Teitz, he was not so happy about this, because he was a rabbi already for 40 years before this. He had changed me after 40 years, but he understood that for the community to survive and thrive, it was necessary. But he had his worries. People would forget that the concept of you can't carry on Shabbos, be forgotten. So when he built the Eruv, I believe that really, as it was pointed out to me by Rav Benjamin Blau, the father and son were a great couple, because the father had the vision and the son got it done. And so when Rav Teitz Sr. said, okay, we have no choice, it was Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz who got the Eruv done. But his father had a condition. People are going to forget about carrying one Shabbos a year. We're going to announce the Eruv is down. It's down. No one can carry. And which Shabbos did he choose? Parshas Vayakel. Because that's Vayakel, at the very beginning, talks about Shabbos. Guess what? I once received a phone call from Elizabeth. The Eruv was down. Really? It was Shabbos Vayakel. I kid you not. You're not. That was the Shabbos. I believe that after a few decades, when Rabbi Elazar Mayer realized that this is Eruv are now throughout the country, that Xera stopped. About there was just now a reference I was told that Rav Shapiro mentioned about the Yotzros. I was told that Rav Teitz Sr. had the Yotzros and Rav Teitz Jr. had it until last year. Young Israel of Riverdale is still saying Yotzros, believe it or not. That was my first fight in shul. I have to tell one story at least to my Rabbanis. I came to my Rabbanis Pashas Bo way back when, 1974. That same year that Rav Moshe's Eruv Tshuva. So I came Pashas Bo, B'Shalach, Yisro, everything's fine. Yisro, they wanted to give me a Sarah Sadibris. I'm a Levi. No, I'll make it to Osafis. I said, Rabbanis is an easy street. Well, the fourth week I was there was Pashas Mishpatim Shkolnik, like we had yesterday. So after they start, the Chazan goes, Yahrtzeit. No Yahrtzeit. I said, oh. So I had one question as a rookie. What did they do last year? Huh? Good question. We said Yahrtzeit. No, we didn't say Yahrtzeit. I said, oh. Now I know what it means. So I let, it was Hefka that whole year. The next year I called my predecessor, who was an itinerant rabbi, he wasn't living there. He said, they said Yosef, so we're still saying them, believe it or not. Okay. Just give you an example. Fine, tradition. I want to say as follows. Rabbi Yamal told me that Rav Teitz, in his expertise in Shechita, locked horns with none other than the Satmar Rebbe. The Satmar Rebbe wanted to have the same person do the Shechita and the Bedika, which is typically not done. So the Rebbe said, but my Shachtim are so good that they can do both. So Rav Teitz gave him back with a zinger. Your Shachtim are better than the Shachtim of the Chassam Sofer. To which the Satmar said, Rav Teitz, you're correct, and he backed down. So he gives you the idea of the magnitude of Rav Pinchas Teitz's greatness. Greatness. He corresponded with Moshe Feinstein. There's a whole correspondence about a certain kind of whiskey. It's printed in all the Sforim. Famous correspondence that he had. I got to tell Rabbi Blau told me the following story. When he wanted to put one of those slaughterhouses out of business, he actually had to go to the state of New Jersey. They were selling tray for meat as kosher. So the guy who was in charge said, what do you mean? I studied under a Moshe Feinstein. To which Rav Teitz quipped, under a Moshe Feinstein, you know what that means? It means when he was at the third grade in Mesivta Teferes Yerushalayim on the first floor, Rav Moshe was on the second floor. So he was under a Moshe Feinstein. That's about as far as it went. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid. We all know that the signature trademark of Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz and what he did more than other things was in the field of Gittin. You just heard before, he learned from Rav Spitz. Zatzalum I did not know, but his son is a close friend of mine. And in this way, just as Rav Teitz Sr.'s influence spread far beyond the borders of Elizabeth and the area of Shechita, so too did his son, Rav Elazar Meyer's influence spread far beyond the city of Elizabeth in the field of Gittin. I want to tell you that in the field of Gittin, there's a Gemara in Avheim and Beis in Masechta Gittin. Quote, V'chitema avid l'chumra? It's a question of a shliach. He has to watch the first line of the whole get. Oh, but we'll be more strict. Come on. Let's be more strict. Why not? Nimsata mosei las al gitim arishonim. You can somehow cast aspersions on earlier Gittin, which one may not do. I'm so proud that Rav Jachter Shalita is carrying on the Masorah that he received from Rav Teitz. We have sometimes funny things we do in Gittin. I'm not going to talk anything about Gittin here, but I do know in certain situations, people are writing the names of certain places and even names in Gittin based upon the pronunciation of the immigrants of 100 years ago. 100 years ago. What state are we in now? What state are we in? Not New Jersey. Oh, no. We're in New Jersey. I kid you not. I don't want to get involved in Hilchos Gittin now, but there's certain Masorahs which seem so strange to us. No one wants to change things which are here for 100 years. That's the power of Masorah. The power of Masorah. In this area, I believe that both Rabbanim Teitz felt a stronger kinship to the psakim of the Aruch HaShulchan, even more so than the Mishnah Berurah. The Aruch HaShulchan was the Rav in a very, very large city, Navardak, where the Mishnah Berurah was primarily a Rosh Hashiva in a little town called Radin. Nothing take away Chalila, he was a Rabbin Shel Kol Yisrael. We all learn Mishnah Berurah every single day. But they felt that a Rav in a big city had a different type of an attitude. And part of that attitude was the affirmation of Minhagei Yisrael. This goes back to a long Ashkenazic tradition. If you look in Tosfos in one place, they ask a kasha, how can the Gemara say this, but the minig is that? We would have asked the other way around. How can the minig be that when the Gemara says this? For the Bali Tosfos, minig Yisrael was so powerful, we can ask the question in the opposite direction. And then we all know how many times the Aruch HaShulchan tries to defend the Minhag Yisrael in place where their Mishnah Berurah said the Minhag is wrong. Of course, the Mishnah Berurah has a tradition from the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon wasn't afraid to say the Shulchan Aruch is wrong and the Minhagim are wrong. That was his independence. But as Rabbanim, there was a very strong affiliation and kinship with the approach of the Aruch HaShulchan. Interestingly, even in Vilna, they didn't follow the Vilna Gaon, as we all know. I want to say something important. Because Rav Pinchas Teitz had another name, as we heard, Mordechai. We're about to enter the month of Adar tomorrow night. We Rosh Chodesh Adar already. Read the story of Purim in the Megillah. It's important to focus on the very last pasuk of the Megillah, by Mordechai Yehudi, which says, Ratzui lerov echov. It's accepted by the majority of his brothers, of his colleagues. Says the Gemara Masechta Megillah, Pirshu mimenu miksa Sanhedrin. There were those of the Sanhedrin who weren't enamored with the career choice of Mordechai Yehudi. In the particular instance, he was too involved in politics, forgive that expression. He had to save the Jews, but he stopped being so much involved in the Beis Medrash. Remember, it's only a miut. The Rov were with him. And any Rav who does anything has to know it's going to be critique. By definition, you do something, anything you do, whatever you do, there'll be those who are not happy. You have to be able to understand that. You know, when what was my first introduction to Rabbi Teitz? Me, as a kid. Remember? L'melernin ablat gemorah. On Motzei Shabbos. Rabbi Teitz, revolutionary. He learned that blat gemorah on Motzei Shabbos. And you're all laughing. That's daf yomis and this. There was no such thing. There's the only one. And he was criticized. What was he on the radio, daf yomi, whatever daf it was, blat gemorah. But he did it. And it was that was my first introduction to him. L'melernin ablat gemorah. He went on for a whole shir at a time when it was unheard of. And he got some criticism for it. He started a school here, the JEC. He was, as usual, hit from the right and from the left. That means maybe you're doing exactly the proper thing. The people in town were upset. It's two separate schools, a boys' school and tomorrow down a girls' school. It's so expensive and so unnecessary. Everything is co-ed in those years. No, has to be separate, and that was not easy. I'm telling you, in those years, it was not easy. On the other hand, he had certain accommodations where from the people on the right were unhappy with. You know, the boys had a basketball team, I remember in those days, which was, they didn't have, in Europe, only had a basketball team in the yeshivas. I doubt that. And that's for the boys. For the girls, he taught Mishnayos. Oh, people didn't like that. Mishnayos for women, what's this? So yeah, that's it. Ratzu l'rov echov. That's how it is in life. You do good things, there can be those who are not happy. And he once was unhappy with the Agudas Rabbanim, which is one of the major organizations at the time. He started his own. Remember that? America's Rabbanim. Didn't last too long. He was willing to start his own organization. Remarkably, in his signature accomplishment of Shechita, which he had, I'm pretty sure, the most Mehuda Shechita in pre-World War II, probably the best in the whole country. But you know, the Hasidim came in after the war, and then this and that, and the other thing in the OU, and what was considered the most Mehuda Shechita in the 30s and 40s and 50s, came to the 70s and 80s, may not be good enough for us. Ironically, but that's how it is. Ratzui l'rov echov. We find the same thing, the same exact thing, in Rav Elazar Mayer's signature accomplishment. Kitten. I'll only mention one case. He hit from both sides. He was involved in a complicated case. He was getting blistering criticism for holding on to a get and not delivering it. And when he delivered it, he had blistering criticism why he did deliver it. You can't win, Rabbi. You can't win. You can only be Ratzu l'rov echov. Every decision he made was based on his Masorah and his understanding of what is proper. I want to speak about Tchelis. Jachter told me to speak about Tchelis. I have what to say about Tchelis also. But I want to point about Tchelis from the perspective of Masorah. I'm not going to go into all the details, whether this snail is Tchelis, is not Tchelis. I'm agnostic. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I have a Masorah too. Mara is what comes from Rav Yosef Dov Levi Soloveitchik, from his mouth to my ears. He told us, in the name of his great-grandfather, Rav Yosef Dov Levi Soloveitchik, that even if they were to discover the proper species, it has no halachic significance. Sounds like a very strange statement. The example given by his great-grandfather was pre-Eitz Hadar. Pre-Eitz Hadar, you and I all know, it's an esrog. How do you know it's an esrog? There's so many other beautiful fruits. It's a Masorah. He said if it was forgotten, and they do archaeology, would find a pile of esrogim next to Lulav, Adasim, and Aravis. So the archaeology, the hashara would be, this must be it. It wouldn't matter. Once the chain is broken, it cannot be reinstated. You have to wait till Mashiach to know what the pre-Eitz Hadar would be. You have to wait till Mashiach to know what Tchelis really is. I heard it from his mouth. Excuse me. Forgive my cold. This is contra, as Rav Jachter mentioned, to two of my most illustrious Rabbi, Rav Jachter Shalita and Rav Zalman Nechamer Zatzal. Rav Jachter, in his Inas Egos, quotes the Gemara in Baba Basra, Rav Ayin Dalet, which indicates that one can learn from archaeology. In the Machlokas, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, how many strings they have to be. And when someone came across these artifacts, he was criticized. Why didn't you look and see how many strings were under tzitzis so we could decide who's right? So you see, you can learn from archaeology. This is not a question against what my Rabbi taught us, the way I understood it. It's only when it comes to a matter of a species, like a pre-Eitz Hadar or a chilos and tchelis, then we cannot rely. Once the chain is broken, it's broken for good. But in terms of how many strings, that you can discover from archaeology, if it's conclusive, as a matter of fact. So Rav Jachter Shalita comes to an amazing conclusion in the Sefer Ginas Egos. I want to discuss it for a moment. On page Tezayin, he's concerned. Now remember, Rav Jachter Shalita is the premier Talmud of Soloveitchik. Please remember that. His concern with a Torah prohibition. It's called Bal Tigra. Look, there's Bal Tosif and Bal Tigra. And the way he explained it so beautifully, Kedarko, if you fulfill a mitzvah in an incomplete fashion, you're in violation of Bal Tigra. Says Rav Jachter, we have this tchelis, which he thinks is more than just plausible, is real tchelis. So if you decide you're only going to wear white and now wear blue, you're potentially in violation of Bal Tigra. Therefore, he writes something which is so incredible, but it's there. Look on page Tezayin. Someone who could buy tchelis and decides not to buy tchelis and wears only white can be violating Bal Tigra. Better, don't wear Arba Converse at all. Remember those tzitzis checks you had in MTA? You know, those, no problem. My fellow Rav Jachter told me not to wear tzitzis. But here's the problem. Rav Jachter's issue of how you tie it, it's a minor problem. It's a much more major problem. We have 8 strings hanging down. How many should be blue? Rambam says 1. The Rabbi says 2. Rashi and Tosfos say 4. As we said before, there's no Masorah. What do you do? What do you do? You have no Masorah, what do you do? So what do people do? They vote with their feet. In Eretz Yisrael, only 2% follow Tosfos, 61% follow the Rambam, and 37% the Ravid. Even in America, of Jachter's country, only 17% follow Tosfos, 38% the Rambam, 45% the Ravid. So what's going on? As I explained in a piece that I wrote about called Hatchelas Makebes Halavan, which came out in something called Kol Tzvi, Tovshin Pei Gimel. It's very possible. If you have the wrong number, if it in fact is Tchelis, you're not yahrtzeit at all. At all. Who wrestled with this question? Rabbi Elazar Mayer Goldberg. He raises a question called the simple read of Tosfos. If you have the wrong number, you're not yahrtzeit. He gives an answer, and sometimes we say in our language, the question is better than the answer. In my view, it's a very serious problem. Rav Jachter has no problem. Why not? Kedaka B'Kodesh, as a Gadol B'Dor that he is, he decided who's right. He's going to decide who's right between Rambam, Ravid, and Rashi Tosfos? Yeah, not me. The Shulchan Aruch follows Tosfos. The Mishnah Berurah follows Tosfos. He has proof, 100% proof. He's 100% right. Sugya of Gardumim and other sugyas. So therefore, has to be 4. Probably only 2% follow him in Israel and 17% in America, and the rest don't even follow him. It's a problem. So I spoke to Rav Jachter, said to him, Rabbi, if you're going to pass in this way, people will start wearing tzitzis. We all know the tzitzis checks, no? Yeah. Rav Jachter said, don't wear tzitzis. So in his piece, Rabbi Jachter, in his very forceful presentation, where everyone has to wear 4, makes the following exception. Those who follow the Vilna Gaon in all matters have a right to wear tzitzis 1 or 2, because the Vilna Gaon thought that the Rambam and the Rabbi were right against Tosfos. That's only if you follow the Vilna Gaon in everything. But those who don't must wear 4. Adkar. So I asked him if I could paraphrase that in the following way, which I did with his permission. Those who follow Rav Jachter and everything, and they're not wearing to wear blue, shouldn't wear tzitzis at all. You also shouldn't drink milk at all. There are other things that Rav Jachter has. But those who don't should wear what I'm doing, forgive me, to wear what Rav Teitz did and his father did and his grandfather did, to wear 8 white strings. Rav Jachter was masking that for that formulation. So I ended my piece by saying, I hope that Mashiach will come soon, and we'll know what the tchelis is and how many strings to put on. Till then, everyone should follow Masorah. What is Masorah? There are 2 kinds of Masorahs we just indicated. There was a general Masorah. Puch Chazim Yamed Debar, the Gemara says, what are people doing? That was the hallmark of Tosfos and the hallmark of the Aruch HaShulchan. What the people are doing, people who are scrupulous, it can't be wrong. There must be a justification for it. We should try our best to find the proper justification. Unless someone has their own Rav. It could be the Vilna Gaon, it could be Rav Jachter, and it could be a Tana. The most famous instance is Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar was a man who was very forceful in his own opinions, and he even went against a vote in Sanhedrin, which caused some grief. But there are other situations where there was no vote. The most famous one being, it's the name of a parak in Shas, Parak Rabbi Elazar de Mila. Begins in Av Kuf Lamed, where the Gemara tells the following story. Rabbi Elazar held a unique shita, idiosyncratic shita, that since Mila is Docha Shabbos, as we all know, all the prep is also Docha Shabbos. In this town, with Mila and Shabbos, they would take a hatchet and chop down a tree and make a fire and make a knife, just to show that Rav Elazar, the Rabbi, was right. So you think that we would scream out Shabbos? It's Chilul Shabbos for us. Says the Gemara, when the Romans came, made a Gzeir against Mila in all of Eretz Yisrael, there was one town left out, Rav Elazar's town. Rav. They followed their Rav, the Masorah of their particular Rav, and they were rewarded for it, not punished for it. Amazing. Amazing. Those who follow their own Rav, as Rav Teitz Zatzal followed his father, that's their Masorah. And they don't have to be concerned with Rabbi X, Y, or Z have to say. Most of us are not blessed with that unique type of personal Masorah, so we have to try to do what Klal Yisrael does. Because remember, ultimately the Torah was given to Klal Yisrael. Ultimately. Where do we find this? If you open up the introduction to the Beis Yosef, of Yosef Karo, he writes there that he has pardon the expression, a fantasy bezdin. A bezdin of three people, the three amudim, the three pillars that all of Klal Yisrael relies upon. He meant his Eidah, Edot HaMizrach. And therefore they are the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh. And it almost always follows the majority of those three. Of course, you understand that the majority of those three was Sephardi, as was of Yosef Karo. When the Ramah came along and wrote his introduction to Darkei Moshe, he said, I'm just going to change one little bit. The Rambam will leave in, the Rosh will leave in. Instead of the Rif, we'll throw in the Bali Atosas. So when that little change, the majority switched from Sfarad to Ashkenaz. But who gave us the right to do that? Who gave us the right to do that? You know, there was expression, power to the people. Lo b'shamayim, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael, and if they decide that these three are the pillars, then they're the pillars. You follow those pillars. There were pillars in medieval times, pillars in early modern times, and there are pillars in every generation. In every generation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises, in every generation there will be pillars. And you in Elizabeth, New Jersey, have been blessed for 90 years to have these two great pillars, Rav Pinchas Teitz, followed by Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz, as your pillars, pillars who built this community, pillars that you were able to rely upon in all circumstances. It's my tefillah and my bracha that this wonderful community shall continue to thrive under its present leadership, and that the commemoration of the neshama of Rav Elazar Mayer Teitz, Zichrono Livracha, on the occasion of his first yahrtzeit, should illuminate this community. Should be an Elazar based on the Masorah of Moshe Rabbeinu, a mayor illuminating this community and beyond for many years to come, until we'll see that great light, the Or Chodosh Al Tzia Torah, V'niske Kulanu B'mheira Li'oro, Amen V'Amen.